The camera was shaking, the lens was blurry, and David Hasselhoff, the man who had run in slow motion across beaches, watched by 1 billion people, the man who had talked to a car named Kit, the man who had sung to millions in front of the Berlin Wall, was lying on a kitchen floor trying to eat a cheeseburger with his bare hands. He couldn't stand up, he couldn't form a sentence, and his 16-year-old daughter was recording every second of it. This wasn't a movie. This wasn't a television show, this was real life, and it was the moment that would either kill David Hasselhoff or save him. But to understand why his daughter did something so brutal, so seemingly cruel, you need to understand the invisible prison that David Hasselhoff had been living in for years. A prison made of spotlights, applause, and bottles. A prison where the jailer and the prisoner were the same person. This is the story of the night the cameras stopped lying, the night the illusion shattered. The night David Hasselhoff's daughter made a choice that the world called heartless, but that would become the only thing standing between her father and a grave. To the world, David Hasselhoff was invincible. In the 1980s he was Knight Rider. He was Michael Knight, the man with the talking car, the perfect jawline, and the effortless cool. Kids wanted to be him. Adults wanted to know him. He was everywhere. Lunchboxes, posters, magazine covers. David Hasselhoff was America's hero. Then came Baywatch, and if Knight Rider had made him famous, Baywatch made him immortal. The show was watched in 14 countries. Over 1 billion people tuned in every week to watch David Hasselhoff run across the sand in slow motion, saving lives, solving problems, being the ultimate symbol of strength and control. He wasn't just an actor, he was a brand, he was a phenomenon. In Germany, he was bigger than Elvis. His song Looking for Freedom became the anthem of the fall of the Berlin Wall. When he performed at the Brandenburg Gate on New Year's Eve 1989, over 1 million people showed up. They chanted his name, they wept. To them, David Hasselhoff wasn't just entertainment. He was hope, he was freedom itself. But here's the thing about being a symbol. Symbols don't get to be human. Symbols don't get to be tired. Symbols don't get to admit that the weight of being watched by 1 billion people is slowly crushing them from the inside out. David Hasselhoff was drowning, and nobody could see it because he was too good at pretending to be the lifeguard. It started small. A drink after a long day of shooting, then a drink before the shoot to calm the nerves, then a drink during lunch to take the edge off, then a drink in the morning because the hands were shaking, and the only thing that stopped the shaking was more alcohol. David Hasselhoff had always been a social drinker. Hollywood was built on cocktails and charm, but somewhere along the way, the drinking stopped being social. It stopped being fun. It became survival. He would stand in front of the mirror in his trailer, looking at the man staring back at him. The jawline was still there. The smile was still white and perfect. But the eyes were different. They were the eyes of a man who was running out of time and didn't know how to stop. His marriages fell apart. First one, then another. The tabloids had a field day. Hasselhoff's heartbreak. The Hoff's love curse. They turned his pain into punchlines. And David smiled for the cameras, signed the autographs, and went home to pour another glass. His daughters, Taylor Ann and Hayley, watched it all. They were young, but they weren't blind. They saw the bottles. They saw the late nights when their father didn't come home. They saw the mornings when he couldn't get out of bed. They saw the man the world loved slowly disappearing into a fog that no one could penetrate. Taylor Ann, the older daughter, tried talking to him. "Dad, you need help." David would laugh it off. "I'm fine, sweetheart, just a little tired. You know how this business is." Hayley, younger and quieter, would sit on the stairs and listen to her father stumbling through the house at 3 a.m., talking to himself, crying about things that didn't make sense. She wanted to help, but how do you help a man who won't admit he's falling? By 2007, David Hasselhoff wasn't just drinking, he was disappearing. The man who had saved thousands of lives on television couldn't save himself. It was May 2007, a Saturday night. David Hasselhoff was alone in his house in Los Angeles. His daughters were supposed to be with their mother, but plans had changed. Hayley had come home early. She walked into the house and heard the sound immediately, a low guttural moaning. Not quite crying, not quite words. Just the sound of something broken. She found him in the kitchen. He was on the floor. His shirt was off. There was food scattered around him, a cheeseburger half eaten, ketchup smeared on his chest. His hands were shaking so badly that he couldn't hold anything steady. "Dad?" Hayley's voice was small, scared. David looked up at her. His eyes were glassy, unfocused. He tried to say something, but the words came out slurred, meaningless. He reached for her, but his hand couldn't find her. It just waved in the air like he was drowning in invisible water. This wasn't the first time Hayley had seen her father like this, but it was the worst. This was different. This wasn't drunk. This was dying. And in that moment, Hayley made a decision that would haunt her and save her father at the same time. She pulled out her phone, and she started recording. The video is 4 minutes and 32 seconds long. It feels like an eternity. David Hasselhoff is lying on the kitchen floor, shirtless, his face red and swollen. He's trying to eat a cheeseburger, but he keeps dropping it. His hands won't cooperate. He mumbles something about being fine, about not needing help, but the words are barely English, and through it all, you can hear Hayley's voice, 16 years old, shaking, crying, "Dad, you have to stop. Please, you're scaring me." David tries to respond. "I'm okay, baby. I'm okay." But he's not okay. He can't stand. He can't focus. At one point, he looks directly at the camera, and his face crumples like a child who's been caught doing something terrible. He knows he's being filmed. He knows what this looks like, but he can't stop. He physically cannot stop. Hayley keeps the camera steady. She doesn't look away. She doesn't turn it off. "You promised, Dad. You promised you'd stop." David's eyes fill with tears. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." And then he collapses back onto the floor, the cheeseburger falling from his hands, his body going limp. The video ends. When the video leaked to the public months later, the world lost its mind. People were outraged. How could a daughter do that to her father? How could she film him at his lowest moment? How could she betray him like that? The tabloids called her cruel. They called her opportunistic. They said she was trying to embarrass her father for attention. But they didn't understand. They didn't know the full story. Hayley didn't film that video to hurt her father. She filmed it to save him. For years, David Hasselhoff had been in denial. Every intervention, every plea from his family, every warning from his doctors, he had brushed them all off. "I'm fine. I can handle it. I don't have a problem." He was a master of illusion. He could put on the charm, flash the smile, and convince anyone that he was in control, even when he wasn't, especially when he wasn't. But you can't argue with a video. You can't charm your way out of footage of yourself lying on the floor, unable to speak, unable to function, slowly killing yourself while your teenage daughter begs you to stop. Hayley knew that. She knew that words wouldn't work. She knew that promises wouldn't work. The only thing that might work was showing her father the truth, forcing him to see what everyone else could already see. It was an act of desperation. It was an act of love. And it was the bravest thing a 16-year-old girl could do. David Hasselhoff woke up in the hospital. He didn't remember much about the night before. Fragments, the kitchen floor, the cheeseburger, Hayley's voice. His manager was there, his ex-wife was there, and Hayley was there, sitting in the corner, her eyes red from crying. Nobody said anything at first. The silence was thick, suffocating. Finally, David spoke. His voice was hoarse, broken. "What happened?" Hayley looked at him, and then she showed him the video. David watched himself. He watched the man on the screen, the man who couldn't stand, couldn't speak, couldn't function, and something inside him broke. Not the way it had been breaking for years, not the slow, invisible crumbling. This was different. This was sudden. This was complete. "That's me." Hayley nodded. David stared at the screen. Tears streamed down his face. "Oh my God, that's me." For the first time in years, David Hasselhoff saw himself. Really saw himself. Not the character, not the image, the truth. And the truth was that he was dying. The doctors gave David Hasselhoff an ultimatum. Get help now, or you won't live to see your daughters graduate high school. For years, David had been able to walk away from ultimatums. But this time was different. This time he had seen the video. He had seen what his drinking was doing to him. More importantly, he had seen what it was doing to his daughters. He checked into rehab. Not for the cameras, not for the tabloids, for Hayley, for Taylor Ann, for himself. Rehab was hell. Detoxing from alcohol after years of abuse is like trying to survive a war inside your own body. The shaking, the sweating, the hallucinations, the panic attacks. David went through all of it, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the emotional reckoning. In therapy, David had to face the question he had been avoiding for years. Why? Why had he started drinking? Why couldn't he stop? Why was he willing to destroy himself, his family, his legacy, for a bottle? The answer was complicated. It was about the pressure of fame. It was about the loneliness of being a symbol. It was about the fear of being forgotten. It was about the void that applause can never fill. David Hasselhoff had spent his entire life performing, being the hero, being the man with all the answers. But heroes don't get to be vulnerable. Heroes don't get to ask for help. And so David had turned to the one thing that made him feel like he could keep going: alcohol. But alcohol doesn't save you, it just delays the crash. Months later, the video leaked. Nobody knows exactly how it got out. Some say it was a hacker. Some say it was a disgruntled employee. Some whispered that it was Hayley herself, trying to make a point. But those whispers were cruel and wrong. Hayley never wanted that video to go public. It was meant to be private, a tool for her father's recovery, not entertainment for the world. When it leaked, the media frenzy was instant. Every news outlet played the clip. Every talk show host made jokes. David Hasselhoff became a punchline again. But this time, it was different. This time, the joke wasn't funny. People watched the video, and they saw something they hadn't expected. They saw a man in pain. They saw a daughter trying to save her father. They saw a family breaking apart. And some people, the ones who had battled addiction themselves, the ones who had watched loved ones spiral, they saw something else. They saw courage. David Hasselhoff could have hidden. He could have denied it. He could have blamed Hayley, blamed the leak, blamed the world. But he didn't. Instead, he went on television. He sat down with the cameras, and he said the words that every addict fears: "I have a problem, and I'm getting help." It wasn't easy. His voice shook. His hands trembled. But he said it, and in saying it, he gave permission to millions of other people to say it too. Recovery isn't a straight line. David Hasselhoff relapsed more than once. In 2009, he was hospitalized again for alcohol poisoning. The tabloids had a field day. Hasselhoff can't stay sober. The Hoff falls again. But every time he fell, he got back up. Every time he relapsed, he checked back into treatment. And every time, his daughters were there. Hayley never apologized for filming that video, and David never asked her to. Years later, in an interview, David said something profound. "That video saved my life. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to watch, but it was also the most honest. Hayley didn't film me to hurt me. She filmed me to wake me up, and it worked." Hayley, now an adult, has spoken about that night too. "I was terrified. I didn't know if he was going to make it through the night. I thought, if something happens to him, at least he'll see what I saw. At least he'll know why I'm so scared. I didn't want to lose my dad." The relationship between David and his daughters today is different. It's not perfect. Recovery is messy and complicated, but it's real, it's honest, and it's built on something stronger than fame or image. It's built on truth. David Hasselhoff is 71 years old now. He still acts occasionally. He still performs. But he's not chasing the spotlight the way he used to. He talks openly about his addiction. He works with organizations that help people struggling with alcoholism. He tells his story, not because it's easy, but because it might save someone else. And he credits his daughters, especially Hayley, with giving him a second chance. The video that broke the internet, the video that made David Hasselhoff a punchline, the video that exposed his darkest moment, became the video that saved his life. Because sometimes the truth is brutal, sometimes love looks like cruelty, and sometimes the only way to save someone is to show them what they refuse to see. David Hasselhoff's story isn't a Hollywood ending. It's not neat. It's not wrapped in a bow. It's messy and painful and real. But it's also a story about redemption, about family, about the courage it takes to admit you're broken, and the strength it takes to put yourself back together. That video, the one that the world mocked, the one that turned David Hasselhoff into a meme, was an act of love. Hayley didn't film her father to destroy him. She filmed him to save him, and in the end, it worked. David Hasselhoff didn't die on that kitchen floor. He got up, he got help, he got sober, and he got his life back. Not because of applause, not because of fame, but because a 16-year-old girl loved her father enough to show him the truth, no matter how painful it was. That's the real story of David Hasselhoff. Not the man who ran on beaches, not the man who sang at the Berlin Wall, but the man who hit rock bottom and had a daughter brave enough to film it, brave enough to say, "You have to see this, Dad. You have to see what you're doing to yourself, to us." And he saw it, and it changed everything. Rest in peace to the myth. Long live the man who fell, the man who got back up, the man who learned that being a hero doesn't mean being perfect. It means being human. And David Hasselhoff, finally, after all these years, is learning how to be human again.